So today we finally got to hear from the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. They met in Washington, D.C., and I actually watched it twice because I really wanted to take in everything that it was they were saying, because for far too long we've never had the opportunity to hear from them. Congressman Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have been leading the charge to have the Epstein files released. And I want to start off this video by saying this. To me, this is not a political video. I don't care if you're a fan of my channel or not. This is one of those things, if you watch me just to hate on me, this is one of those moments where we should be able to put our differences aside, and regardless of how much you love Trump or how much I hate Trump, that should go out the window right now, and we should listen to the victims. I'm going to start off by showing you a clip from Thomas Massie talking about what it meant to gather there today. And this is not political, because when we turn it into politics, then we end up politicizing people's pain. This shouldn't be about that. This should be about all of us coming together and wanting justice for these victims, regardless of who the perpetrators were. So I'm going to kick off this video with a clip from Thomas Massie, and then we're going to talk more about it.
My colleague Ro Khanna for co-leading this effort to bring transparency and justice for these victims. I hope my colleagues are watching this press conference. I want them to think, what if this was your sister? What if this was your daughter? When these survivors speak, the Washington establishment is asking the American public to believe something that is not believable. They're asking you to believe that two individuals created hundreds of victims and they acted alone, and that the DOJ has no idea of who else might have been involved, that nobody else did anything that rose to a criminal enterprise. The American people know that's not true. Now, the Speaker of the House just offered a fig leaf to my colleagues. They're going to vote on a non-binding resolution today that does absolutely nothing. I appreciate the efforts of my colleague James Comer, who's leading the Oversight Committee. They may find some information, but they're allowing the DOJ to curate all of the information that the DOJ is giving them. If you've looked at the pages they've released so far, they're heavily redacted. Some pages are entirely redacted. And 97% of this is already in the public domain. So I'm calling on my colleagues. Be one of the next two who sponsors this discharge petition. I think it's shameful that this has been called a hoax. Hopefully today we can clear that up. This is not a hoax. This is real. There are real survivors. There are real victims.
Yeah, there's nothing at all that's believable about this story when they want us to believe that Epstein and Maxwell acted alone and no one else was connected to it. And when one minute they tell us there's a list, and the next minute they say there's no list at all, and there's a phase one, and then suddenly there's no phase two, then it starts to look like the biggest cover-up that we have ever seen. But Donald Trump was asked later about this meeting that happened at the Capitol, and he played one of his favorite hits these days, which he called it all a hoax. Take a look.
Mr. President, right now there have been survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. And Thomas Massie, who is sponsoring a discharge petition to get the House to vote on releasing those documents, says he doesn't believe you're implicated in these files, but many of your friends and donors may be, and he says that's why the Justice Department is redacting them and slow-walking the release. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir?
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation.
And folks, I just want to say that was an absolute slap in the face of every one of the victims who spoke today, for him to sit there and say that it's completely irrelevant and now it's all a hoax. This is the guy that ran on it. This is the guy that said he was going to drain the swamp. This is the guy that said he was going to expose all the corruption. And then he sits there now, calls it a hoax, and says that they're not relevant. It's an absolute slap in the face. But this attorney points out he talked to Trump once before, and there was the time that Trump said it wasn't a hoax. Take a look.
I can tell you that I talked to President Trump back in 2009, and several times after that, he didn't think that it was a hoax then. In fact, he helped me. He got on the phone. He told me things that were helping our investigation. Now, our investigation wasn't looking into him, but he was helping us then. He didn't treat this as a hoax. So at this point in time, I would hope that he would revert back to what he was saying to get elected, which is, I want transparency. This about face that occurred, none of us understand it. In fact, I don't understand how this is an issue that's even up for debate. How do you not stand behind these women after you've heard their stories and know that hundreds of them were abused, and it was only because files are being kept in secrecy? The world should know who he is, who protected him, and the other people that are out there to be investigated need to be investigated.
You see, folks, when Donald Trump knew that this could help him politically, he ran on it. He promised to release the files. But now he realizes, hey, my back's against the wall and I got to deliver on what I said. And so then he just twists and says that it's a hoax. And he knows that his most diehard followers will roll with it. They'll jump through the hoops of the mental gymnastics. But the victims can't do that. And I think it's very important that we listen to the victims talk about how it feels when they hear him call this a hoax. Take a look.
President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
What does it feel like emotionally to hear that?
Devastating.
It's being gutted from the inside out. Not that I would know what that feels like, but I imagine it's the anxiety buildup with the depression and the survival mode, and then your nervous system goes limp and ironically is shot. And it feels like you just want to explode inside because nobody, again, is understanding that this is a real situation. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not... Please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us, to see us for who we are and to hear us for what we have to say. There is no hoax. The abuse was real. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, I can't speak for that. What happens around the world politically, I cannot speak for that. But I am here with all of these women, including our attorneys, and I would be more than happy to meet with him, and I will meet him halfway.
What I would like to say to people is this: just imagine if this was your daughter, your sister, your friend who had been abused and their life had been dragged into the public eye, and they're standing there at the nation's capital talking about the pain they endured, and then you've got a president saying it's all a hoax and it's all irrelevant, and let's just talk about how great I've made things. I don't give a damn if this country was absolutely flowing with milk and honey right now. Donald Trump should have had more respect for the victims and to say something like that than to try to paint it as, oh, it's just one big hoax, and oh, this is so irrelevant. Let's all just talk about the great job that I've done. I don't care how good a job I thought I had done. I would have paused and had respect for those victims. But Donald Trump has never done that, and he sure as hell didn't have respect for the victims when he sent Todd Blanche to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell, and then they had her moved to this really comfortable country club prison. I was glad to see the victims talk about this and talk about how that it felt, because again, I always think of them. When I hear of her getting moved to that prison, the first thought that went through my head is, what are the victims thinking? Well, here's what they were thinking.
I was horrified when I found out not only had Ghislaine Maxwell been transferred to what's called a low security. It's really is like a holiday camp, and then afterwards I got a notification from the Department of Justice telling me that this was going to happen when it had already happened. This woman abused children. I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for over 10 years. Ghislaine Maxwell was present for some of my abuse at the hand of Jeffrey Epstein. She was present, she was complicit, she was enabling, and it is appalling and disgusting. And it's one of my worst nightmares that she not only be transferred, but at the possibility that's very much going around that she might be pardoned. This is not okay, guys. This is not okay.
And I just want to add that I think it sends a very dangerous message to our country, to the young people in our country, that someone that we all know is aware of these crimes could be given a pass.
And I'm sure a lot of you were thinking what I was thinking when you saw that part when the flyover happened. That was pretty convenient. I'm not 100% sure if she flipped them off or not, but she should have, because it was pretty blatant to me. A lot of people would say that was a coincidence, but I don't want to try to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but I can't imagine that it was. These people have just been so disrespected every step of the way, and it's high time that we listen to them and hear them out. This next victim talked about Epstein and talked about how that his biggest brag was his friendship with Donald Trump. Take a look at this.
He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And what I endured will haunt me forever. I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you.
Jeffrey and Ghislaine were always very boastful about their friends, their famous or powerful friends, and his biggest brag forever was that he was very good friends with Donald Trump. He had an 8x10 framed picture of him on his desk with the two of them. Like, they were very close.
Now, there's a whole lot of people out there who are still trying to spin this, that Trump saw through Epstein. He saw him for the scumbag that he was, and he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. But what I always point out is that Donald Trump said the reason they fell out is because Epstein took a 17-year-old girl from his spa. So that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know. And to everyone out there that says, oh, they weren't really that close, the dude had a picture of him sitting on his desk. I don't have any pictures of my friends sitting on my desk, but Epstein had one of Donald Trump. That tells you just how close they were, and it tells you that Epstein loved to brag about him. I am going to believe these victims. There's a lot of people out there that will probably try to spin this, that they're just trying to get attention. Folks, that's not what this is. It is high time that the truth come out, and no matter who gets exposed, they all get exposed. And I was really glad to see that the victims said that, you know what, if you're not going to release the list, we can compile a list and we can put it out. Take a look.
I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
So if they don't release the files, the victims can always compile the list because they know exactly who was associated with Epstein. And one of them was actually asked at one point, was there anyone in the government that was on that list? And they dodged that question, and I can understand why, because they fear for their lives. But this is not going to go away for Donald Trump. But before we close, I do want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene was standing there. No, I didn't play any of her clips. I'll just say this about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, I'm glad that she was standing there with Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace, at the moment that I made this video, are the only 4 Republicans who have signed off and wants to see the files released. So I will give them that. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is someone who is looking past Donald Trump, and she is going to make sure that her career goes on after Donald Trump. And so, she's definitely more savvy than we give her credit for. I'm just not going to play her clips and talk about her because I just think she's a terrible human being. That said, I am glad that she was there, at least in this moment, and standing around people who was holding up signs that, that had Trump's face on them and saying release the files, and hearing the victims name Trump as Epstein's biggest brag. I mean, at least March stood there through that. It still doesn't give her a pass, though, for being a disgusting human being. But I do believe that this is not going to go away for Donald Trump. And when this victim was asked, did they have any message for Donald Trump, this is what they had to say.
Listen, I don't want to send a direct message to him. I'm already scared enough. Yeah, just pass the vote. Listen to us. This is not a hoax. Like, it's not going to go away. And like I said on my speech earlier, we're not going to be silenced anymore. We will be speaking moving forward. Wherever we need to be, we will be, and we need to pass this.
And folks, here's the thing. We can't let it go away. We can't let this one get away from us. Donald Trump is going to do everything in his power to distract from this. He's going to call it a hoax. He's going to threaten anybody that speaks out or threatens to release any names. All those victims knew it, by the way. They all knew that they were standing there on very dangerous ground doing that because they're in Trump's backyard. And, when those flyovers happened, you could see several of the victims kind of flinching because they know what they're up against. And so we have to stand up for them, and we can't let this go away. That's what I would say. One of the victims said that they would continue to keep speaking, that they weren't going to shut up. They were going to appear everywhere they could. I hope they can. My platform is always open to any of them who wants to come on and talk about it. I think we should give them the microphone, not Ghislaine Maxwell, not a child sex trafficker. Those people shouldn't be getting to spend time in a country club prison. And those people shouldn't be looking at a pardon. It's absolutely disgusting that we're here. And again, this is not political. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is not left versus right. This is about right versus wrong. This is about humanity. This is about these victims whose lives were ruined by Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and all of the people who helped them to do what they did. And it's not about politics. I can tell you that if Democrats' names comes out or people's names come out that I once had respect for, I will lose all respect for them if they truly are guilty of wrongdoing. There's no way that I would ever continue to prop them up, and there's no way in hell that I would look at this situation and call it all a hoax. And for Donald Trump to do that, it's absolutely the most insulting thing I do believe he's ever said. Especially the fact that he exploited this and ran on it when he knew it would help him politically, and when he realized how much it could cripple him politically, now suddenly it's all a hoax. It tells you just what kind of scumbag he is, what kind of con artist he is, and just how he would exploit people's pain for his own political gain. Regardless of how this goes, it's absolutely exposed Donald Trump for the con man that he truly is. And I'm not saying he's guilty of anything. I'm just saying it's obvious the way that he's went about covering this up. It's obvious he does not care about other people's pain and suffering, and he would exploit it any way he could for himself. So either way you slice it, to me, he's been exposed.